My daughter-in-law thought the fastest way to erase me from the family was to make me look like a thief. What she did not know was that my 13-year-old grandson still had enough goodness in him to tell the truth before her lie could breathe. That Thanksgiving weekend, I arrived at my son Brian's house in Columbus with a pumpkin pie balanced on my lap and my old brown leather purse tucked beside me, the same purse my late husband had bought me for our 35th anniversary. The neighborhood looked like something from a holiday card: trimmed lawns, porch lights glowing amber, wreaths on front doors, and smoke rising from chimneys in the cold Ohio air. He had dressed carefully that evening in a cream sweater, dark slacks, and the pearl earrings Henry used to say made me look elegant. He told myself I was being foolish for feeling nervous. Familias could be strained and still be families. Doors could feel heavy and still open. Back when Ashley greeted me, her smile was too bright, too polished, too practiced. "Margaret, you brought that purse again," she said, touching the strap with 2 fingers as if it were something left on a bus seat. "How sentimental." Brian stood behind her, avoiding my eyes the way he had been doing for months. He kissed my cheek quickly, then turned toward the dining room before I could ask how he was. The house smelled of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and expensive candles, but underneath it all was something colder, the kind of chill no furnace could fix. Ashley had invited more people than I expected. Her mother, Diane, sat near the fireplace wearing a diamond bracelet she kept raising into the light. 2 neighbors were there, along with a couple from Brian's office, all holding wine glasses and speaking in lowered, careful voices whenever I walked by. I set my pie on the counter and tried to be useful, but Ashley kept stopping me. "No, Margaret, sit down. We don't want you wandering around getting confused." She laughed softly, and a few people smiled because they thought they were supposed to. He sat in the corner of the living room with my purse beside my chair and folded my hands in my lap. For a moment, I missed my husband so sharply. He almost reached for the empty space beside me. Henry would have noticed. Henry would have stood between me and that room without saying a word. Dinner began with polite prayers and clinking silverware. Ashley praised herself for the table setting, Brian praised the turkey, and everyone praised Diana's bracelet. Then my grandson Ethan slipped from his chair. He was a quiet boy, tall for 13, with sandy hair and his father's nervous eyes. He thought he was going to the bathroom until I felt a small hand touch my sleeve. "Grandma," he whispered, his face pale, "come here. Please." He followed him into the hallway near the laundry room, where the noise of the dinner table faded into a muffled hum. Ethan looked over his shoulder twice before he spoke. "Don't open your purse," he said. My breath slowed. "Why not, sweetheart?" His lips trembled, but his voice stayed clear. "Mom put Grandma Diana's diamond bracelet in it. He saw her. She said the police would believe her because you were upstairs earlier." For a second, the hallway tilted around me. The family photos on the wall, the holiday wreath on the closet door, the warm light spilling from the dining room, all of it seemed to pull away. He looked down at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me more than the betrayal. "Are you sure?" he asked. Ethan nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "She said once they found it, Dad would finally understand you couldn't be trusted alone." He closed my eyes for one breath. Not to cry. Not to pray. Used to let the last soft part of me harden enough to survive the next 10 minutes. Then I placed my hand on my grandson's shoulder and bent close so only he could hear me. "Listen to me, Ethan. You did the right thing. Now we are not going to stop her." His eyes widened. "Grandma." He looked toward the dining room, where Ashley's laughter rose like glass breaking in slow motion. "We are going to let her finish." He walked back into the dining room with Ethan beside me, though I could feel the fear coming off him like heat from a sidewalk in July. He returned to his chair without looking at his mother. He took my seat slowly and placed my napkin across my lap. My purse was still beside the chair near the wall, exactly where I had left it, but now it seemed to belong to a different woman. A careless woman. A woman Ashley had invented because the real me had become inconvenient. 3 weeks earlier, she had come to my house with a folder, a cinnamon latte, and that same polished smile. She sat at my kitchen table, the one Henry had sanded and refinished himself after Brian spilled grape juice on it as a boy, and told me we needed to discuss my future. She said future the way people say problem. Brian sat beside her, rubbing his thumb along the edge of his coffee cup, never quite lifting his eyes. Ashley explained that my house was too large for one person, that winter utilities in Ohio were only getting worse, that stairs were dangerous at my age, and that a nice assisted living community would give me activities, structure, and people to talk to. He let her finish because women my age learn early that interrupting only gives certain people an excuse to call you difficult. When she finally slid the folder across the table, I saw printed brochures, estimated home values, and a handwritten list of facilities within 30 miles. At the bottom of the page, circled twice in blue ink, was the amount my house might bring if I sold it quickly. $380,000. I remember looking at that number and feeling nothing at first. Not shock. Not anger. Just a quiet understanding that Ashley had not come to help me plan my future. She had come to spend it. My house was not grand. It had old pipes, a stubborn back door, and a maple tree that dropped leaves into the gutters every October, but it was mine. Henry and I had paid it off 1 month before he passed. It had sat beside me on the porch that evening with 2 cups of coffee and said, no matter what happens, Maggie, this roof is yours. He told Ashley I was not selling. Her smile stayed in place, but something behind her eyes went flat. Brian sighed as if I had embarrassed him. Mom, Ashley is trying to help. He looked at my son then, really looked at him. It had Henry's jaw in my father's hands, but not their steadiness. I did not ask for help selling my home, I said. Ashley closed the folder very gently. That was how she warned people, not with shouting, but with softness sharpened at the edges. After that, the small punishments began. Calls went unanswered. Sunday dinners were suddenly too busy. Ethan's baseball schedule changed, but no one told me until the game was over. At first I told myself it was stress. People were stretched thin. Young families carried more than they admitted. But sitting at the Thanksgiving table, hearing Ashley laugh while stolen jewelry rested inside my purse, I understood that every little slight had been a rehearsal. She had been teaching the family to see me as confused, stubborn, unstable, and ungrateful, so when the final accusation came, it would sound like the ending to a story she had already written. He picked up my water glass and took one careful sip. Across the table, Ashley was watching me. Not openly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I noticed. Mothers notice the temperature of a room before anyone says it is cold. Grandmothers notice when a child stops eating. Widows notice when silence has been arranged. Diane lifted her wrist again, admiring the empty space where her bracelet was supposed to be, and Ashley placed one hand dramatically over her chest. He knew then the curtain was about to rise. The bracelet did not disappear all at once. Ashley made sure of that. She let the evening breathe first. She let Diane tell the story of how her late husband had bought it for her during a trip to Naples, Florida, back when retirement still felt far away and their knees did not ache after walking through an airport. She let the office couple admire it. She let the neighbors lean forward and ask how many diamonds were in it. Diane smiled the whole time, proud and flattered, twisting her wrist under the chandelier so the stones caught the light. He watched Ashley watching them. That was the moment I understood she had chosen the bracelet carefully. Not gas. Not a misplaced wallet. Not something ordinary that could be explained away. She needed something emotional, expensive, and personal enough to make the room turn against me before I could speak. Halfway through dessert, Ashley stood and began clearing plates, though she had refused my help all evening. Ethan, honey, why do you not show Grandma the framed photo from your school concert? She said suddenly. Ethan froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at him and gave the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. He lowered his fork. Maybe later, he said. Ashley's eyes narrowed for just a second, then softened again for the guests. Teenagers, she said with a light laugh, though Ethan was only 13. Brian smiled weakly. He knew that smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent years choosing the easiest piece over the honest one. He had seen it at Christmas when Ashley told everyone I was too tired to host, even though she had never asked me. He had seen it on my birthday when Brian sent flowers instead of visiting because Ashley said the kids had been exposed to a cold. He had seen it each time he let her rewrite my place in the family until I became a guest in rooms where I had once been the reason people gathered. Diane, Ashley said after a few quiet minutes, where's your bracelet? The room shifted, but gently, like a boat before the first wave. Diane looked down at her wrist. Her face changed. Oh, she said. I must have taken it off. Ashley set a stack of plates on the sideboard with too much care. You had it on when we sat down. Maybe in the powder room, Diane murmured. Maybe near the fireplace. Everyone began looking around, lifting napkins, checking beneath chairs. He stayed seated. My purse rested near my feet like a sleeping animal with a secret in its belly. Brian pushed back from the table and asked what it looked like, though he had heard the description 3 times already. Ashley moved through the room with growing concern, touching her mother's shoulder, asking guests to check around their seats, playing worry so neatly that I almost admired the discipline of it. Almost. Then she paused near the staircase and turned toward me. Margaret, you were upstairs earlier, were you not? There it was. Soft. Reasonable. Wrapped in politeness. He placed my hands flat on the table. I went to the upstairs hall because you asked me to look for Ethan's jacket. Right, Ashley said, and her mouth tightened as if she hated having to say the next part. I just think we should be thorough. Diana looked embarrassed, but not enough to stop her. The neighbors stopped moving. The office couple exchanged a glance. Brian looked at the floor. For one last second, I gave my son a chance to become the man I had raised. I could have said, do not speak to my mother that way. I could have said, we are not doing this. I could have stepped between a lie and the woman who had packed his school lunches, sat beside his hospital bed when he had pneumonia at 9, and worked double shifts after his father's first layoff so he could keep playing Little League. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, Mom, maybe it would help if everyone just checked their things. I felt Ethan staring at me from across the table, terrified that I would break. He did not break. Breaking would have given Ashley what she wanted. He reached for my glass of water again, took one sip, and set it down exactly where it had been. Of course, I said. If we are going to search bags, let us do it properly. Ashley blinked. She had expected tears. Maybe outrage. Maybe confusion. She had not expected me to sound calm enough to make the room uncomfortable. He looked at Brian. Take out your phone and record it. His head lifted. Record what? Everything, I said. If your mother is about to be accused of stealing jewelry at your Thanksgiving table, I think every second should be remembered clearly. Brian did not move at first. His phone sat beside his plate, black screen reflecting the chandelier above us. He watched his hand hover over it, then pull back, then hover again. It was such a small thing, a grown man afraid to press a button, but it told me more than any apology could have. Ashley stepped in before he could decide. Margaret, that feels a little dramatic, she said, smiling at the guests as if she were protecting them from my instability. We are just trying to find Mom's bracelet. He nodded once. Then a recording should not trouble anyone. The room went still in that special way rooms do when people realize Pelaitnis has reached the edge of a cliff. Diane touched her bare wrist. The office couple looked down at their dessert plates. Ethan sat rigid, both hands under the table, his face pale but determined. Brian finally picked up his phone. His thumb shook when he opened the camera. Fine, he said quietly. Fine. Not I believe you, ma'am. Not this is unnecessary. Just fine. He rose from my chair, slowly enough that no one could mistake it for panic. My knees were not what they had been at 40, but they carried me. That felt important. I reached down, took the strap of my purse with 2 fingers, and placed it on the dining table between the cranberry dish and Ashley's untouched coffee. He did not open it. He did not touch the zipper. He looked at Ashley. Since you are the one concerned, you may check it. Something flickered across her face. A tiny hesitation. Not enough for the others, but enough for me. She had imagined me opening the purse myself, imagined my fingers finding the velvet box, imagined the room gasping as if guilt could be created by surprise. She had not planned to be the hand that revealed her own trap. I do not want to invade your privacy, she said. He almost smiled. You already have. Brian's phone was pointed at the table now. His jaw tightened. Ashley glanced at him, then at the guests, then at her mother. Bride pushed her forward. People like Ashley could abandon a plan, but not when an audience was watching. She stepped closer and unzipped my purse. The sound was small, but in that room it felt louder than thunder. She moved aside my reading glasses, a packet of tissues, my checkbook, a church bulletin I had forgotten to throw away, and the little tin of peppermint candies I carried for Ethan. Then her fingers closed around a dark blue velvet box. Diana let out a soft cry before it was even opened. Ashley lifted it slowly, like a magician revealing the final card. Oh my goodness, she whispered. She opened the box. The diamond bracelet caught the light exactly as it had on Diana's wrist. Someone at the far end of the table inhaled sharply. Brian lowered the phone for half a second, then raised it again when I looked at him. Ashley turned toward me with tears already gathering in her eyes, too fast, too ready. Margaret, she said, voice trembling for the room, why would you do this? There it was. The sentence she had been waiting to say. Not a question, not really. A verdict wearing the costume of grief. He looked at the bracelet, then at Ashley, then at my son. He thought of all the years I had softened my words so Brian would not feel caught between us. He thought of the Christmas mornings I spent alone because Ashley said the children needed a quieter holiday. I thought of the folder on my kitchen table, the circled house value, the way she had looked at my home as if Henry's promise were an obstacle. My chest hurt, but my voice did not. I did not put that in my purse. Ashley's tears sharpened. It was in your bag. Yes, I said. It was. That answer unsettled her more than denial would have. She turned to Brian. Are you hearing this? She is not even shocked. Ethan stood up so suddenly his chair scraped against the floor. It was shaking, but he did not look away. Grandma did not take it, he said. Ashley spun toward him. Ethan, sit down. He swallowed, eyes wet, hands curled at his sides. No, I saw you put it there. The room emptied of sound. Even the furnace seemed to stop. Ashley stared at her son as if he had become a stranger in the space of one sentence. Brian's phone remained lifted, recording every breath, every face, every lie losing its shape. That is not true, Ashley said, but her voice had changed. The polish was cracking. Ethan wiped his cheek with the sleeve of his dress shirt. I saw you in the hallway. You opened Grandma's purse and put the box inside. You said Dad would believe you. Brian turned slowly toward his wife. For the first time all evening, he was not avoiding Anjoni's eyes. For several seconds, no one knew what to do with the truth. It sat in the center of the dining room heavier than the bracelet, heavier than the purse, heavier than every polite excuse that had kept our family moving for years. Ashley recovered first, because people who build lies for a living usually keep spare ones close by. He is confused, she said. Quickly, reaching for Ethan with a smile that looked almost painful. Sweetheart, you misunderstood what you saw. Ethan stepped back from her hand. It was not a dramatic movement. Just one small step. But I saw Ashley notice it, and I saw Brian notice it too. Sometimes a family does not collapse with shouting. Sometimes it collapses when a child no longer trusts his own mother enough to stand near her. I did not misunderstand, Ethan said. His voice shook, but the words were clear. You told Aunt Melissa on the phone that if Grandma looked like she stole it, Dad would make her move out of her house. Diana gasped. Ashley's face went white, then red. That is enough, she snapped, no longer soft, no longer careful. You do not repeat adult conversations. He looked at Brian. His phone was still recording, but his arm had dropped slightly, as if the weight of what he was capturing had become too much. He wanted him to speak. He wanted one sentence from him that did not need coaching. I wanted him to look at his son, then at his mother, and finally choose the side of what was real. Instead, he whispered, Ashley. Used her name. A question. A plea. A man standing at the edge of a room he had helped build and acting surprised by the door. Ashley turned on him immediately. You cannot seriously believe this. A is a child. She probably scared him into saying it. That was when I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and took out my phone. He did not rush. He did not explain. He simply placed it on the table beside the velvet box and tapped the screen. The recording began with the muffled sound of dishes and voices, then Ashley's voice came through, low but clear enough. Once the bracelet shows up in her purse, Brian will finally see what I have been dealing with. She is unstable. She should not be living alone in that house. The room went colder than the November air outside. Ashley stared at my phone as though it had betrayed her, when all it had done was remember. The recording continued for a few more seconds. Another woman's voice asked, "Are you sure this will work?" Ashley gave a small laugh. "Please. Brian always believes me first." He stopped the recording. No. One moved. Diana lowered herself into a chair, one hand over her mouth. The neighbor closest to the kitchen quietly set down his glass. The office couple looked as if they wished they could disappear into the wallpaper. Brian's face had emptied. Not softened. Not hardened. Emptied. He had seen that look once before, when he was 7 and broke Henry's favorite fishing rod, then lied until the truth became too large for his little body to carry. Back then, I had knelt in front of him and told him that mistakes could be repaired, but cowardice grew roots if you fed it. He wondered if he remembered. Ashley found her voice again, thinner now. You recorded me. He folded my hands in front of me. Ohio allows one party to record a conversation they are part of, and when your son warned me that something had been placed in my purse, I decided it was time to stop trusting your version of the evening. This is insane, she said. This is a family dinner. He looked at the bracelet, still glittering in its open box. No, Ashley. These became something else the moment you decided to frame an old woman so you could get closer to her house. Brian flinched at the word house. Good. Some words need to land exactly where they belong. Ashley shook her head, turning toward the guests now, searching for one face willing to rescue her. She found none. Not even her mother's. Diana was staring at the bracelet like it had changed shape in front of her. Ethan came around the table and stood beside me. He did not pull him close, not yet. He wanted everyone to see that he had walked there on his own. Brian finally lowered the phone. Ashley, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, tell me you did not do this. She stared at him, offended not by what she had done, but by the inconvenience of being asked to answer for it. I picked up my purse, zipped it closed, and held it against my side. The old leather was warm from my hand. For years, I had carried tissues, peppermints, church bulletins, grocery receipts, birthday cards, and little things grandchildren forgot in my cartoonite. Ashley had tried to make it carry my shame. Instead, it carried her proof. Ashley did not answer Brian. She looked at me, then at Ethan, then at the guests, measuring every possible escape and finding each one blocked by her own voice still hanging in the air. For the first time since I had known her, she had no polished sentence ready. No gentle correction. No wounded sigh. No careful little laugh to make everyone else feel unreasonable. Diana stood slowly and reached for the velvet box, her fingers trembling as she closed it around the bracelet. Ashley, she said, and the disappointment in her voice seemed to age her 10 years at once. Tell me this is not what it sounds like. Ashley's eyes flashed. Ma'am, do not start. You know how Margaret is. She has been making Brian miserable for months. There it was again, the old trick, shifting the weight from what she had done to how difficult I was for noticing. He had heard versions of it for years. Margaret is sensitive. Margaret takes things personally. Margaret does not understand boundaries. Margaret is lonely, so she exaggerates. Each phrase had been a small shovel of dirt, burying my credibility one dinner, one holiday, one phone call at a time. He set my purse back on the table and looked at my son. Brian, I want you to hear something clearly. He did not come into your home tonight to fight with your wife. He came with a pie. His eyes moved toward the kitchen counter, where the pumpkin pie still sat untouched beneath a sheet of plastic wrap. Such a small, foolish thing to notice, but I noticed it. He had crimped the crust by hand that morning. He had sprinkled cinnamon on top the way Ethan liked. He had driven 20 minutes across town with it balanced carefully in my car because I still believed effort meant something to family. Ashley gave a short, bitter laugh. Listen to her. She always knows how to make herself sound like the victim. He turned to her. No, Ashley. Tonight you tried to make me sound like a criminal. The word landed hard. Not loud. Hard. The neighbor by the fireplace shifted uncomfortably. The office woman pressed her lips together. Brian closed his eyes, then opened them again, as if hoping the room might change while he was not looking. It did not. Ethan stood close to my chair now, his shoulder nearly touching mine. He could feel how badly he wanted to cry, but he was holding himself together with the kind of courage adults spend years pretending they have. I told the truth, he said quietly. Ashley pointed at him, not touching him, but cutting him with the gesture. You embarrassed this family. He stepped between them before the words could reach him any deeper. No. I protected it. She stared at me. From you. That was when Brian finally spoke with something like a spine in his voice. Enough, Ashley. It was only 2 words, but the room heard them. Ashley heard them most of all. Her face shifted from anger to disbelief, as if betrayal was something only she was allowed to commit. You are choosing her over me, she asked. Brian looked at Ethan first. Then at me. Then at the phone still in his hand. I am choosing what I saw. I wish I could say that healed something in me. It did not. True spoken late does not erase the years when silence did its damage. But it changed the air. Ashley took a step back from the table. This is ridiculous. You all turned this into some kind of trial. He picked up my coat from the back of the chair. No, dear. You prepared the evidence. We only let you present it. Diana sank back into her chair with the bracelet in her lap. I think everyone should go home, she whispered. One by one, people began gathering coats and murmuring awkward goodbyes. No one looked at Ashley for guidance anymore. That was new for her. He watched her realize it. The room she had arranged as a stage had become a mirror, and every person in it could see her clearly. Brian came toward me slowly. Ma'am, he said. I am so sorry. He wanted to accept it. He wanted to be the kind of mother who could fold pain into forgiveness simply because her son looked ashamed. But shame is not repair. Regret is not protection. I buttoned my coat and held my purse close. Not here, I said. Not tonight. Ethan reached for my hand. Ashley inhaled sharply. He is not leaving with you. He looked at Brian. This time, he did not look away. He can walk his grandmother to her car, he said. It was a small permission, but for Ethan it was freedom enough. We stepped into the cold Columbus night together. The porch lights glowed against the frost on the lawn. Bem doce, the house was still bright, still beautiful, still full of food and flowers and ruined pretending. Ethan walked beside me down the driveway, his hand tucked into mine like he was 6 years old again. When we reached my car, he whispered, I am sorry, Grandma. He squeezed his fingers. You have nothing to be sorry for. I looked back at the house, then at me. Are you going to be okay? He opened my car door and placed the purse on the passenger seat. The same purse Ashley had chosen for my humiliation. The same purse that had held the truth long enough for everyone to see it. Yes, I said, and for the first time that night, I believed myself. But things are going to change now. The drive home took 20 minutes, but it felt longer because silence has a way of stretching when your life has just changed shape. He kept both hands on the wheel and followed the familiar streets through Columbus, past closed shops, gas stations glowing under white lights, and houses where families still sat around tables believing the evening had gone the way holidays were supposed to go. My pumpkin pie remained on Brian's kitchen counter. He thought about that more than I wanted to. Not the bracelet. Not Ashley's face when the recording played. De pie. The ordinary care of it. The way I had woken early to make the crust from scratch, pressing the edges with a fork just as my mother taught me. The way I had packed it in a towel so it would not slide on the passenger seat. That was the part that hurt in a place too quiet to name. He had arrived with dessert. She had prepared a crime shaped like concern. When I pulled into my driveway, my little brick house sat dark except for the porch lamp I always left on. Henry had installed that lamp after I tripped on the front step one rainy evening 15 years ago. No wife of mine is coming home to a dark porch, he had said, standing there with a toolbox and more confidence than electrical skill. He sat in the car for a moment, looking at the warm circle of light on the concrete. This was the house Ashley wanted. Not because she loved it. Not because she understood the evenings Henry and I spent painting the hallway, or the pencil marks on the pantry door where we measured Brian from kindergarten through high school, or the lilac bush planted the spring Ethan was born. She wanted the number circled in blue ink. She wanted the sale. She wanted me made small enough that taking it would look like helping. Inside, I locked the door behind me and placed my purse on the kitchen table. He did not open it right away. He made tea first. Small rituals matter when people try to turn your world into chaos. He filled the kettle, took down the chipped blue mug Ethan always called my lucky cup, and waited for the water to boil. My phone buzzed 3 times before the tea was ready. Brian. Then Brian again. Then a message from Diane. He did not read any of them. Not yet. The first person I called was Linda Carter. She had been my closest friend for 30 years and had worked as a paralegal before retiring to spend more time with her garden and her opinionated beagle. When she answered, I said, Linda, I need to change my will. She did not ask if I was overreacting. That is why she was my friend. What happened, she asked. He told her everything. Not with tears. Not with trembling. Used the facts, one after another, like setting plates on a table that had finally been cleared. The bracelet. Isin. The recording. Brian's phone. Ashley Sakjesashin. Linda was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then she said, Margaret, this is not family drama. This is a legal boundary now. He looked at my purse sitting under the kitchen light. The leather was worn at the corners. A peppermint wrapper peeked from the side pocket. I know, I said. And I did. For years, I had treated Ashley's behavior like weather, unpleasant but temporary, something to endure until the sky changed. But weather does not fill out brochures for assisted living. Weather does not ask about home equity. Weather does not plant stolen jewelry in a widow's purse and expect her own son to nod along. Linda told me to save everything, send her the recording, write down the timeline while it was fresh, and not meet Brian alone until I knew what I wanted from him. After we hung up, I opened a notebook from the drawer beside the stove. The first page was blank except for a grocery list I had started and forgotten. Milk. Eggs. Brown sugar. He turned to a clean page and wrote the date. Then I wrote Ashley's name. Then Brian's. Then Ethan's. My hand moved steadily. He recorded every detail I could remember, not because I wanted revenge, but because truth deserves a place where it cannot be interrupted. At 11:30, my phone buzzed again. Dime, I looked. Brian's message was short. Ma'am, please answer. I am outside. He went to the front window and pulled the curtain back 1 inch. His truck sat at the curb, headlights off, engine running in the cold. I was alone. For one foolish second, my mother's heart rose in me, ready to open the door before my mind could stop it. Then I looked back at the kitchen table, at the purse, at the notebook, at the house Henry had promised would remain mine. He typed 1 sentence and sent it. Not tonight, Brian. Then I turned off the porch lamp for the first time in years. Brian stayed outside for nearly 10 minutes. He watched from the darkened living room, standing where the curtain left a narrow line of glass. His truck idled at the curb, a faint cloud of exhaust drifting behind it in the cold. Twice, he picked up his phone. Twice, he lowered it again. He knew that posture. It was the same way he used to stand outside my bedroom door after he had misbehaved as a child, wanting comfort before confession, forgiveness before honesty. He loved him then. He loved him still. That was the cruelest part. Love does not vanish just because trust has been damaged. It stays, but it changes temperature. It becomes something you hold carefully, because it can still burn you. When his truck finally pulled away, I remained by the window until the red taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went back to the kitchen table and read the messages. Brian had sent 6. The first said he was sorry. The second said he had no idea Ashley would go that far. The third said Ethan was crying and asking if I was safe. The fourth said Diane had taken the bracelet and left without speaking to Ashley. The fifth said Ashley was upstairs packing a bag to stay with a friend. The sixth was the one that made me sit down. Ma'am, I should have believed you sooner. I read that sentence 3 times. Sooner. It is a small word, but it carries a long road behind it. Sooner would have been when Ashley first called me confused in front of the children. Sooner would have been when she brought brochures to my kitchen table and circled the value of my house. Sooner would have been when I spent Easter alone because she told everyone I had chosen not to come. Sooner would have been before Ethan had to stand in a dining room and become braver than every adult at that table. He did not reply. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, though I had barely slept. The house was quiet in the blue-gray light, and for once the silence did not feel empty. It felt watchful. He made oatmeal, took my blood pressure medicine, and placed my phone face down beside the bowl. Linda called at 8:15. By 9:30, I was sitting across from her at a small law office downtown, the kind with framed diplomas, old carpet, and coffee that tasted like it had been waiting since Monday. Linda had already spoken with an attorney she trusted, a calm woman named Rebecca Mills who listened without interrupting. I handed over the timeline I had written, sent the recording, and explained that Brian had video of the search. Rebecca folded her hands on the desk. Ms. Whitmore, before we discuss anything else, your home, your finances, and your legal authority need to be protected immediately. Hearing a stranger say it made the truth feel official. Not harsher. Clearer. We reviewed my will, my medical power of attorney, my emergency contacts, and the old permission forms I had filled out years ago giving Brian access in case something happened to me. He had done it out of love. Ashley had seen it as a door. That door closed before lunch. Brian's emergency access was suspended until further notice. Ashley's name, wherever it appeared in old family paperwork, was removed. Rebecca advised me to preserve every message, avoid private conversations about the incident, and put future communication in writing. I nodded, signed where she pointed, and felt no triumph. Only relief, dry and quiet. Afterward, Linda and I sat in her parked car with the heater running. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. You know Brian is going to come back with tears. He looked out at the courthouse steps, where people in winter coats hurried past carrying folders and coffee cups, each one with a private trouble tucked under an arm. I know. And what will you do? I thought of Ethan's hand in mine on the driveway. He thought of Henry's porch lamp. I thought of Brian standing in that dining room, recording the truth only after I asked him to. I will listen, I said. But I will not unlock my life for an apology. Linda smiled then, not happily, but proudly. That afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store and bought a small pumpkin pie from the bakery case. It was not homemade. The crust was too perfect, the filling too smooth, the label crooked on the plastic lid. He brought it home, cut one slice, and ate it at my own kitchen table with a cup of tea. No guests. No polished smiles. No one measuring my usefulness against my property. Used me, my house, and the purse resting on the chair beside me, no longer a symbol of humiliation, but a quiet witness to the night I finally stopped letting other people search through my life and call it concern. Brian came to my house 3 days later, not at night this time, and not unannounced. I texted first. Then he waited until I answered. That was the first small sign that shame was beginning to learn manners. He let him come on Saturday morning, when the sun was pale over the frost and the neighborhood was quiet except for a leaf blower somewhere down the street. He did not make coffee for him. That may sound small, but in my house, coffee had always meant welcome, and I was not ready to offer that word yet. He sat across from me at the kitchen table where Ashley had once placed the folder with my future priced in blue ink. A looked tired, older than 42, with dark circles under his eyes and both hands wrapped around nothing. Ashley is staying with her mother, he said. E nodded. Ethan is with me. That made me breathe easier, though I did not show it. He has been asking about you. He looked at my son then. He should never have had to protect me from his own mother. Brian swallowed. I know. The words were plain. No excuses followed them. That matter. Not enough to heal everything, but enough to keep me seated. It told me he had watched the video again. It had sent me a copy, as Rebecca had requested. It had also saved the messages from Ashley afterward, the ones where she blamed stress, then blamed me, then blamed Ethan for misunderstanding, then blamed Brian for humiliating her in front of guests. Blame travels in circles when it cannot find truth. I should have stopped it before it got that far, he said. He folded my hands around my mug. You should have stopped it years ago. His face tightened. There was no cruelty in my voice. That was what made it harder for him to hide from. Every time she made me smaller, you called it keeping peace. Every time I was excluded, you called it a misunderstanding. Every time I tried to tell you something was wrong, you asked me to be patient. Brian, patience became the room where she built her plan. A looked down. A tear fell onto the table, but I did not reach for his hand. Mothers are trained to comfort the pain of the child, even when the child is finally feeling the pain he helped create. He stayed still. What do I do now? He asked. Foronse. He sounded less like a husband seeking permission and more like a son asking where the road begins. You tell the truth without making Ethan carry it for you, I said. You protect your son. You do not ask me to sit at a table with Ashley to make everyone comfortable. You respect the legal boundaries I have put in place. And you understand that access to me is not the same as entitlement to me. A nodded slowly. And thus. The question broke something small inside me, not because I did not love him, but because I did. A mother can love her son and still lock the door, I said. A closed his eyes. When he left, he did not ask for a hug. At the doorway, he turned and said, I am sorry, Mom. Dime, I answered. I know. It was not forgiveness. It was a receipt. Winter settled over Columbus after that, gray and quiet. Ethan came by the next weekend with a school backpack and a nervous smile. We baked a new pie together. I measured the cinnamon too generously, and I let him. While it cooled on the counter, he asked if he had ruined everything. I placed the rolling pin in the sink and turned to him. No, sweetheart. You ended something that needed to end. His shoulders loosened, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, he looked 13 again. In the weeks that followed, my house became mine in a way it had not been for years. Not because of the paperwork, though Rebecca made sure that was solid. Not because Ashley was gone from my doorway. But because I had stopped apologizing for taking up space in my own life. He replaced the porch lamp Henry had installed with a brighter one. He changed the locks. He planted 2 small boxwoods by the front walk before the ground froze. And every morning, I set my old brown purse on the chair beside me while I drank my tea. Its leather was scuffed. Its lining had a faint peppermint smell. Though anyone else, it was just a worn handbag an older woman refused to replace. Though me, it was the place where a lie was supposed to destroy me and failed. Ashley thought shame would make me leave quietly. She forgot that women like me have spent a lifetime carrying heavy things. Groceries, children, grief, bills, secrets, forgiveness we were never thanked for. One more burden did not break me. It only reminded me to put it down where everyone could see it.